Hello, folks. We have today again a special guest, Gojko Adzic, the man that needs no introduction, but still, I'll try some. He's a he's a product builder and developer. I think I heard that you said about yourself like that. Are you still thinking about yourself?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so great. And then author of of a lot of books, nine, I think. Is it correct?
Yes, nine.
Yes. Yeah. And one of those books, so the most recent one, so the lizard optimization will be the leitmotif of our today discussion. But the main idea is to discuss with Gojko his works and his thoughts about, why we as tech people should be learning about products building and how we can facilitate that with a bit of lizards. So first question, after reading your book, I'm not sure first thoughts, but one of the main thoughts was that you are really serious about coffee. Is that true?
I'm absolutely very serious about coffee. Yes.
So what single origin coffee you prefer the most? Because
Oh, I have
you
lots of
mentioned
stuff. I mean, at the moment, I have some stuff from Burundi and stuff from Guatemala and things like that. So I like slightly more kind of acidic coffee. I
uh,
don't like the kind of Brazil style coffee, but yeah, I have I drink lots of kind of Kenyan coffee as well and things like this. Yeah, you can get amazingly good coffee these days from all over the world.
yeah, I heard that developers are machines filled with fuel like coffee and pizza, so kinda that works.
Absolutely, yes, yes. And chocolate in my case.
Yeah. Okay, so do you have your favorite conspiracy theory? Because you
Oh,
mentioned.
my favorite conspiracy theory is that the stuff we make in software actually has any sense. I think that's a big conspiracy, and you can see kind of people believing that, and that's just not true.
Mm.
I mean, it is in some percentage, but a very small percentage. I love Ron Kohavi's latest book, Trustworthy Online Controlled Experiments. Ron became famous for publishing data about Microsoft in 2009, where he worked on online experimentation. And in 2009, he kind of published that about one third of things they do at Microsoft actually deliver any business value. And about two thirds don't. And then once he became famous in this community, people started kind of getting in touch with him and sending him data. So in the book he published a few years ago, Trustworthy Online Controlled Experiments, he has data from Slack, from Google, from Netflix, and companies like that. And the range is usually between 10 and 30%.
Mm.
So, people who are supposed to be the best in the industry, building products, actually, 8 out of 10 times in average, build wrong ideas. And I think that's my favorite conspiracy theory is when people think that what they're doing actually delivers value, where there's a like overwhelming probability it's not going to deliver any value.
Yeah, of what I heard, but I don't think that it's a scientific. There is a scientific proof, but if you're right about like 20% of your decision, then you are actually pretty good decision maker.
I think so. And if you're right about 20% of the features you build as a software company, then you're a pretty good software company. And that's a really interesting thing, when you think about like why should you care about product as a developer? Because as a developer, I like that my work actually has impact. I would not like my work to be pointless, and I think there's a lot of ways we can spend our time in kind of pointless busy work, but in a sense, it's really important to kind of figure out is what we do actually valuable. And from that perspective, I think developers, architects, technical people really need to care about product.
Mhm.
My journey to this was where I was a CTO at a company a while ago, and to this day, I still think that was the best technical team I've ever worked with. We had continuous delivery before that was a buzzword, and before the continuous delivery book came out, we had um, deployments on the cloud like 2007 on Amazon and things like that. What would now be called microservices and all those things. Technically, it was amazing. The company ran out of money because we did not have the toolkit to challenge kind of the product side of stuff, and we kind of didn't know how to prevent rebuilding the same thing 10 times and to figure out if what we're doing actually has any impact or not. So it was a really big kind of slap in the face for me when we started having financial trouble as a company. And I couldn't understand what was going on, but that got me to kind of start thinking about where really our bottleneck was not the technology, our bottleneck was somewhere else. And then I had to learn that somewhere else so that I don't ever get into the same kind of problem again.
Mm. Yeah, that makes total sense to me. That also happened to me a few times where, like we discussed right before going into recording, that I was part of a few projects where I thought like, yeah, our tech stack is at the current state of the art, definitely above the average. We were really focused on making the proper process, but then it appeared that, for instance, we were building, something like file management system for huge files, like think about product management. And then we were trying to go cloud and use, for instance, the Office 365. But then, of course, technically it all makes sense, but then it all boils down to the question: did you ask your users whether they would like to just have a different UI for the Office 365? So then a lot of time was wasted.
And you can follow up that with the question that even if your users told you they want that, is that actually what they need? Because you have,
Yes.
as an industry, we've kind of been suffering from this problem for a very long time. Anthony Ulrich published a book, I think early 2000s or late 90s, called What Customers Want, where he argues that, even when people tell you that they want something, you shouldn't trust it because they might not know what they want. They might express things as kind of their problem, but they might express things as their solution to an unstated problem. And they're not software engineers, they're not solution designers, and they're giving you a solution they think is good, but maybe you can think of a different solution if you understood the problem well. And that kind of all these things are inconsistent and things like that. So definitely engaging users is a big skill, but asking people what they want and trusting them is, uh, questionable. But
Yeah.
even that, as you said, is most people never even ask the users whether this is something useful or not, and kind of end up delivering useless stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. So maybe a short disclaimer: why did I start with those weird questions? Maybe not besides the coffee, because that was serious question, but the one about the conspiracy theory is a small spoiler. We probably will have some spoilers today. Gojko idea around trying to search for optimizing your product or finding the unexpected needs is about looking for weird behaviors, so those lizards. So is it like your way to double check if those 80% of your decision that looks wrong are actually correct, or maybe how some of them
Well, I
you
mean,
can
there's
reuse?
lots of ways of doing that, and I think one way of checking whether you're doing something right or wrong is to have a clear idea of what you want the outcome to be, and
Mm-hmm.
um, in a sense, like measuring whether you are solving the problem, not measuring whether you're delivering the solution. So we need to
Mm-hmm.
have measurements that are not tied to our work. We need to have measurements that are tied to the outcome of our work, the impact of our work on the world. And there's a bunch of ways of doing that. My preferred ways is to look at, are we creating a change in users' behavior? Because if we're not creating any change in users' behavior, if I do some software and people don't do anything faster, easier, cheaper than before, then we're really not delivering any value at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good way of potentially doing that. But lizard optimization is not kind of just about that. I think that's kind of good product experimentation anyway, is doing that. And that's kind of, again, Ron Kochavi's work is really good for that. If people want kind of a deeper dive into something like that, another really good book to read is Evidence Guided by Itamar Gilad, which is a wonderful book. Itamar was the product manager for Gmail, and he writes a book how they were kind of measuring effects of creating a tabbed inbox in Gmail and things like that. But all that is kind of looking at the expected side of things. And when you kind of think about what's happened in the technical side of the industry over the last 10 years with observability, with, when you have hundreds of microservices, you need to figure out whether one of these services is doing something weird or not. And we've developed tool like crash analytics, we've developed tool like exception tracking, we've developed stuff that can tell us whether something unexpected is happening. And we're using that to track technology, but I started using that to track business. And by doing that, you spot that people are doing weird stuff that, just normal human logic cannot explain. And if those people contact you and report a bug, then those bugs get labeled as, oh, the user is too stupid or the user is not technical or something like that. But that's really a horrible way of looking at it, because what that is there's a mismatch. I love that word. I stole it from Kat Holmes, who wrote a book called Mismatch exactly on this thing, where there's a mismatch between the user's situation or the user's ability and your software. And if the UI doesn't have enough contrast, maybe people who are not like fully vision enabled are going to have trouble, but also somebody who's perfectly healthy and they're sitting on a beach and there's a bright sunlight, or they're working in a dimly lit office, they might have trouble kind of clicking on the right button and doing things that look like, a lizard did it, not a human. But when you start tracking these things systematically, then it opens up lots of good product opportunities, because if we can fix the product to work well in those situations, then we can improve it for everybody. So one example that I can kind of give you from MindMap. A while ago, we had a bug report where this lady was complaining that the software doesn't work when she runs it on her fridge. And it was like insane. Like, why would you even think you can run the software on a fridge? It's not intended for fridges. It's a collaboration diagramming app. You're supposed to run it on your laptop or a desktop. And then we started talking to her, and it turns out that she was kind of trying to collaborate with her colleagues while preparing breakfast for her children. This was before COVID and work from home and things like that. And kind of in the kitchen, it was really difficult to keep a laptop there and dangerous. You don't want to kind of spill things on it. The phone screen was too small. She had an Android screen on a fridge and tried to open the software there. So the solution for that is not to make the software work on a fridge. That's economically pointless. And you're chasing then kind of really weird use cases. But the solution for that is to understand, here's a use case where somebody's trying to use our software without a keyboard. It doesn't matter if it's a fridge or something else, and without a keyboard, our software didn't work well. You might not be able to fully support everything without a keyboard, but maybe kind of it's enough for her just to observe collaboration and work in that environment, and maybe just kind of do a bit of drag and drop or something that needs to do a highlighting. And we kind of started changing the user interface to work better with kind of non-keyboard kind of environments. And this improved the software for everybody, not just for people who want to run it on a fridge. Because actually, it took us, this was a challenge to improve usability of the product. So we improved it even for people with keyboards effectively. And I think that's really important as an thing, because again, in Mismatch, Kat Holmes writes about how you shouldn't kind of solve a weird problem like that for one person. You should solve it for that person, but then expand to everybody. And that's how we improve our products.
Mm. Yeah, I also loved the story about when you notice that your application, the Narakit, is used by from some weird domain that were looking like some mixture of a Google and scam domain, and it appeared that people were trying to put your website into automatic Google translation, and then it stopped to work correctly or start to work weirdly.
Yeah, and there was a weird case as well. It's something I never expected. Like you know, it's a web app. I never expected people to use automated translation on it. And in fact, you know, there's two types of automated translation. That's what I've learned. There's automated translation that works directly in the browser. Um, and that basically just modifies the HTML in the browser. But there's also automated translation that works as some kind of server-side proxy, where Google actually kind of creates a copy of your website on the fly and translates things. And that breaks lots of kind of weird things in weird ways. And one of the things that it broke, and we kind of figured this out again by error monitoring, because we were getting people to, there were tasks failing where the parameters were really, really weird. The parameters did not exist in our system. And for example, the parameter for voice, like an API call for voice, was getting called with voix, like a French translation of that. It's like, how, why, you know, how does that even happen? I mean, is somebody trying to hack us? You know, what's going on? And then we kind of trace this to this translation thing, because the task configuration form was configured by a JSON file, and the JSON file was sitting on our server. And when this kind of proxy was translating things, it was also translating the keys in the JSON file, because it thought that's text. And that's insane. I mean, it was effectively not just translating configuration values, but configuration parameter names. And then they didn't match the API. And of course, you know, figuring something like that is, well, is that even a bug? Because it's been, if it's a bug in Google Translate, not in my software. But
Yep.
in a sense, my users are being blocked. It's an obstacle for my users there.
Yeah.
And, you know, if I could complain all the time I want about a bug in Google Translate, that's not going to work. But what I can do is I can figure out what's going on. So it took us a while to figure out that we needed to set a different MIME type, not text JSON, but application JSON. And then Google stopped translating configuration files and kept translating everything else. So we enabled that use case. And, you know, the really interesting thing is, although I still have not fully invested in internationalization of the user interface, because kind of I can't kind of offer proper support for that yet. A huge percentage of our users are using the website through Hindi or Russian or Chinese. And we are enabling these people to work because they're using kind of these third-party translation tools, which were just being blocked, and I didn't even know that they would be blocked. And that's one of these kind of unknown unknowns. And that's why I said it's really important to look at errors, exceptions, and all those kind of weird things, and figure out, are we learning something about it from the business perspective?
Yeah, I fully agree. And when I was reading your book, then my thoughts were that it's kind of goes well together with the recent getting back to, you know, the original chaos theory works like Cinefin framework. I probably mispronounce it, but it's about selecting whether something is complicated or complex, or something that is already like a common thing. So is it like the lizard theory, is it about trying to dig out those scenarios that are potentially like can be the differentiation makers? Because, you know, those are probably also the spots that others might not notice. Like I didn't even know that. I know that Google can translate the web page, but I didn't even know that it can even mimic the page, that you can even click through it. So my
Yeah,
guess is that.
I didn't as well, but my users showed me that. So I don't know. I've never kind of thought about kind of comparing it to Canevin or something like that.
Mhm.
Maybe, but I guess these things are the big problem is it's unexpected, really, and because it's unexpected, it can't be flushed out through user interviews or
Mhm.
something like that, because if I knew to interview those people, then I would have predicted I needed that, because I didn't think about interviewing those people. I couldn't
Yeah.
predict what they're going to say. So the interesting thing is here, really, the product is going where the product wants to go, and you need to follow it. Or you can ignore it and fight against it, which lots of people are doing. There's a lovely example I found in Founders at Work by Jessica Livingston. She was interviewing people who started successful companies about kind of the early stages of their work. And there's a company there where in late 90s, they figured out how to do cryptography on low power devices and really optimize cryptographic algorithms. And then there was a solution. There was something, somebody figured out, I really want to build like cryptography on low power devices. But then the question is, what do you use it for? And one of the things they thought about using it for was money transfer, because money transfer needs security, security needs cryptography, and they were able to run money transfer on mobile devices. They selected Palm Pilot devices then. That was popular. And they were using it like, so you take your Palm Pilot, I take my Palm Pilot, you bump them, and there's some money transfer there. And World Wide Web was just emerging there. So these were late 90s. As a way to kind of promote the product in more places, they created a web page where you could also transfer money to, a Palm Pilot device or another user of the site. And then people started using the website without Palm Pilot devices, which was not the original case. What they wanted to do was the website to promote the Palm Pilot app, but people were using the website without ever having a Palm Pilot, and they were using it on all sorts of weird third-party sites to try transfer money. They were using the product name. It got like associated with potentially some crowd that this didn't want, and the product managers fought it. The marketing people fought it. They were prohibiting people from using it. And then somebody added up the data a bit later, and it turns out the website, which was like a demo and a stupid, unsexy thing, according to the founders, was like it had 1.5 million active users, and the Palm Pilot app had about 12,000 active users. And they decided, well, the product went somewhere completely different, and they stopped working on the Palm Pilot app, and that's today PayPal. That's how PayPal got started. And if you're really kind of strict about your vision, you keep building the stupid mobile app, and you kind of fight with people who are using your product in different ways. If you're smart about this, then you kind of skip the phase where you fight. And lots of product managers keep fighting users where the users want to take an app somewhere else because it's not true to their vision. And I think by doing lizard optimization, my hope is that people can approach this more systematically. So we can skip the phase where we're fighting against people who want to take the app in a different direction, understanding that maybe there's a new product, there's a new channel. Not necessarily let's kill everything that we've done, but there is a new channel here that we might want to explore. And one example is from Narakit. Originally, Narakit started as a tool for people to make videos from PowerPoints, where you would put some visuals on the slide, you would type in the voiceover into speaker notes, and it would create text-to-speech voiceover based on the speaker notes to create a video. And some people kept paying me to build blank videos, which was really bizarre. I mean, why would anybody do that? And I thought, I have a bug in the system, and I thought that whatever they're uploading, we can't read correctly. So it's producing a blank output. And the problem is lots of people were using our product for like a fully automated pipeline. And maybe they're not even watching these videos. They're publishing them somewhere, but they're blank. And when they figure that out, it's already going to be too late. They'll be disappointed. So I didn't want to wait for people to kind of complain about the bug. I wanted to fix it. And I got in touch with one of those users and I said, look, I think there's a problem somewhere here. I don't know what the problem is, but I'll refund the money you've paid me so far. Help me solve the problem so we can kind of. Then they said, okay, let's solve the problem. What is it? And I said, well, these videos, when I look at the PowerPoint, there's no visuals in it. And like, what tool are you using for it? Because there's a million tools people can use to export PowerPoints. Maybe they're not using something we can read. I said, well, we're using Office 365. It's like, okay, that's weird. So we really have a bug here. So when you open the slides on your screen, can you send me a screenshot? And the person sends me the screenshot and it's completely white. And we're like, okay, so it's white for you as well. It's not a conversion bug. He said, yeah, it's white. And I said, well, why on earth are you paying me to create white videos? I mean, what's the point of that? And it turns out that kind of we were iterating on this whole text-to-speech functionality, and we built it that it's so usable that the users would suffer through creating a blank video with voiceover just to extract an audio track. He never needed the video, he just needed an audio track. But there was no way to just do an audio on our system. He had to build a video. And I realized this is totally a different use case. So we kind of built a small screen where you just upload the Word document, you get a voiceover, and you can use all these kind of tricks we've done to make text-to-speech more productive. That user was wonderfully happy because you don't have to wait for the whole video pipeline to launch. I was much happier because it's a lot cheaper to build audio files than videos operationally, so a lot more money stays in my pocket. And then a really weird thing started happening because kind of next month we had as many audio files as we had video files being built on the system. Then 2 months later, there were more audio files built than there were video files. And now there's like video files are maybe less than 1% of what gets built. So although my original vision was for something totally different, we had more than 100 times growth in terms of usage by helping this lizard user, but not just helping him, making the product better for everybody.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's kind of like giving you more tools for educated decisions for cases like when your product is in the plateau, or you just can get more. Like there are many cases where people are giving those thank you for nothing type of advices, like if you're in a plateau, pivot, or if you are in a plateau, keep going because you need to be consistent. But then I'm calling that thank you for nothing advice because, like, how do you know? How do you know when you should pivot or where you should keep going if you don't have data? If you don't have, then it's still more like a guessing than just making the right decisions. So my question is, how do you sort? Because my guess is if it's about lizards, people doing weird stuff. So how do you reason when you have multiple cases where something looks really wrong or like a mismatch between your vision and what our users are doing? So what are your tools to select on which type of unexpected usage you'd like to work on?
So one of the best tools for that comes from a book called Lean Analytics, and it's called The 5 Stages of Growth. And it's a progression through logical stages a successful product typically takes based on their research. And there's like 5 different stages of that. It's a complicated topic on its own. So, I don't want to go too deep into it now, but effectively it talks about how you first have to prove that you're solving an interesting problem or an important problem. And then you have to prove that there is a market for it. Then you have to prove that you can reach the market. Then you can prove that you can build a sustainable kind of revenue stream. And then you can optimize the operations and optimize for scaling and things like that. So I use that model quite a lot to try and figure out what type of behavior changes should the product be causing at this stage, and
Mm-hmm.
what type of behavior changes can we leave for later, or it's too late now to look at it. It's kind of, we would just do more of what we've already done, so it wouldn't create a significant impact. So yeah, that's a very, very good tool, and I wish I had that mental tool when I was the CTO of that company I mentioned, because I think that would have solved a lot of problems.
Yeah, plus in the book you also mentioned that to focus only on one at once, not to.
Absolutely, yeah. Focus on one behavior change, try to make it work, and measure whether you're causing that thing, and also measure if you're causing unintended impacts.
Mhm.
That's again with people where they follow their own logic. It's not necessary that you will understand fully what they want to do, especially kind of the first time around. So figure out if you're causing any other unexpected impacts. That's really, really important.
Mhm. Yeah, I like that. I'm also a big fan of event sourcing, and one of the the phrases about event sourcing is about that it's architecting for the future questions. So that's kind of work in a similar way, not necessarily about the exact business data, but in event sourcing it also means like let's just keep as much context as we can, because then as we have it, then we can use it. Like I'm
Hmm.
also giving quite often the example of e-commerce and dropped baskets, because your e-commerce site can be going pretty well, but if you only focus on the stuff that are going well, then you might not have optimized your business enough, because if the dropped baskets are really important metrics, and if you dig why people are dropping your baskets, then it can be much cheaper than just trying to go with the cold advertisement to get more users, just to
Yeah. I
uh,
mean, look, once, like when a user is already interacting with your product, most of the work for that user is already done. Kind of you acquire.
Mhm.
So now the question is, do you lose him or not? That's a totally different thing. And in the case of these kind of dropped baskets, like the lizard optimization would ask, are people dropping baskets to create a sound and then giving them a drum instead, so they can avoid dropping baskets.
Yeah.
But it's kind of something completely unpredictable. Like, are they dropping baskets because of something you don't understand?
Yeah, like I that reminded me of one weird case. Like back in the days where MP3 files were popular, then I was listening for uh, alternative band called Big Black. It's never mind what's the type of music. It's a weird rock music, and then I heard the sound um, of the notification in the popular in Poland chat system, and then I thought that they stole it from this song. But then it appeared that my colleague, when he was ripping the CD, then he got the notification and
Oh,
got.
okay.
But it was so nicely in the right place that I my initial idea that really this is where it comes from, but it appeared that it was not. But yeah, uh, going back to lizard optimization. So my understanding is that lizard optimization is a tool for if you already have at least some users or at least some people that you can talk to. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I think, it's observability and monitoring and trying to figure out what people are doing weird depends on people being there to do weird things. If you don't have users yet, then they can't do weird things and you can't monitor it. So there are
Hmm.
other tools that are kind of better for earlier stage products. User interviews, focus groups, lots of other things like customer research. But lizard optimization is something that helped me optimize a product that's already on the market. It's not kind of the product launch, it's optimization.
Hmm. So do you think that you can kind of prepare for unprepared stuff? Like how, besides observability that you already mentioned, how can you uh, prepare to make your either product or architecture prepared to be able to get that insights at
I think
least?
one of the key things is, to look at what are the touch points that a user might do something that we don't expect. And in software, these things typically come up as error screens, error dialogues, and things like that. And I don't mean the error dialogue that says unexpected error occurred, or OX5777, and then you have a cancel and a cancel. But what I mean is you have genuine workflow errors that people are kind of hitting because they're trying to do something that the software doesn't support yet. And we can use that as feedback for what to improve. Like I mentioned, this kind of screen where people can click on a button and upload the Word document. If somebody selects, say, a JPEG file or a PNG or something like that, it's like you don't really upload that to a text-to-speech system. It's not a text file. So you'll get a nice screen saying, hey, you tried to upload a JPEG file. That's not a text file. We can't read that. But what I also get is I get a notification that somebody tried to upload a JPEG file. And then I look at that and I look at that systematically and a bunch of other things. And for example, I've discovered that way that, every day I have a couple of users trying to upload Android package files into a text-to-speech system, which makes no sense at all. I can't explain it. I don't know why, whether they're kind of malicious and trying to think that maybe I'll install the APK file and see what runs, or maybe just a five-finger problem. Maybe somebody kind of has a text file and an APK file, they selected the wrong thing. But then, there were people who occasionally upload an MP3 file. You've mentioned MP3 files. So why somebody would upload an audio file into a text-to-speech system is, like, again, I can't explain. Lizard. But there were a bunch of people uploading subtitle files. And we didn't support subtitle files because kind of I didn't expect that. And kind of iterating over that and figuring out what's going on, we've learned that people have an existing video, they have a subtitle for the video, they want to create a different audio track in a different language. 90% of the functionality was 99% of the functionality was already there. We just were not parsing the subtitle file correctly. And took a day or two of work to do that. That was like by far the most profitable thing I've ever done in my life. Because a bit later, a very large enterprise software company kind of got in touch. They have hundreds of thousands of videos to convert into different languages. We had like an American mega church that has religious sermons, and they wanted to have that in different languages and things like that. So it's not a lot of users. It's a very small percentage of users that need this, but people that need it really, really need it. Yeah. And they're using it a lot. And in terms of just kind of raw profit, I think that's probably the most profitable feature on the system. And it came out directly as a result of monitoring why the error dialogues were popping up.
Yeah, so that sounds to me like also being able to target potentially the most engaging type of users.
Well, I mean, yes, but if you look at this, again, that's in hindsight. That's going back and saying these people are engaging a lot. People uploading subtitle files and saying we don't support subtitle files. They're not engaging with you. Somebody's not going to keep trying to upload hundreds of thousands of subtitle files. They'll get a notice that it's not supported and stop doing it. The question is, do you want to do something about this to unlock this as a potential use case? And I think that's an interesting thing to think about, and that's kind of what lizard optimization is about. In kind of that terminology, lizards are kind of doing something that no rational human would do. You don't understand why they're doing it. They're not following your logic. But if you try to understand their logic, then it might kind of open up new use cases.
Yeah. And do you, like, on your, do you do the lizard optimization on daily basis? Like, for instance, I know that some companies has like policy like zero bugs policy, or do you have like a zero lizards?
No, I don't. Policy? I mean, and some things, again, you will never be able to explain. Like why people, I mean, why people are uploading MP3 files, I don't know. I've tried to get in touch with a few of them. They don't respond to my emails. So, some of these things just happen. Some of these things are weird things that are caused by third-party browser extensions or things like that. So there's going to be a lot of noise. Like any kind of exception tracking and error tracking, there will be a lot of noise. And then kind of the question is whether you want to dig into that and figure out something. And I think it's just one tool. It's not the only tool. It's not the best tool for everything. It's one tool that I thought would be interesting for people to learn about. Primarily because I think when something like that happens and when we make a discovery like that, people usually attribute it to luck, or they usually attribute it to like serendipity and things like that. And I think there's a process to make these kind of lucky accidents systematic. I think lucky accidents happen to everybody, but you need to understand that a lucky accident happened to you, and you need to understand the context of it to be able to benefit from it. Otherwise, you're missing the opportunity. And I think that's kind of my lizard optimization is my attempt to make that systematic so that people can approach it in a more systematic way.
Yeah. So are you doing like scheduled sessions, or are you doing more like a case by case?
It's more kind of I'll review weird stuff every day, and some days there's not going to be anything interesting there. Some days it's going to be something curious, and then I'll look into that. It's not really kind of scheduled. It's more when I have time, I will look at what's in the logs and what's weird, and see if there are any new patterns there.
Yeah, so definitely logging, observability, and about the observability part, because you mentioned already Crashlytics and some tools that are giving you the option to do like automated reports based on your environment. So do you also do some like, let's say, more precise instrumentation? Like, to give the example of what do I mean, in one of my projects, as part of the design sessions, we were also discussing what sort of functionalities we would like to instrument. So by instrument, we were just storing some more meaningful events in analytic tooling than just something clicked or something errored. Do you also do such stuff, or
I mean, absolutely,
at least with the lizard optimization? Do you think that such preparation would be useful, or is it more?
I mean, now we're getting into a really interesting territory, and that's your instrumentation for lots of different things. And there's a model I quite like that can help people listening to this. It's called the experimentation growth model. I can include a link to it, and you can maybe send
that would be
notes.
Great.
And it comes from kind of a research that Alexander Fabian has done with teams at Microsoft and Booking.com and Intuit and places like that, on how that kind of experimentation evolves typically. So they have identified 4 stages: crawl, walk, run, and fly. And at each of these stages, they have like things that you need to do to progress to the next level. So at the first level, usually kind of it's unstructured events, it's logs, and you have the ability to do 1 or 2 tests a month or something like that. But then you start building more instrumentation, it becomes more kind of systematic. So at the first level, people typically do experiments only on the design, on the visuals. On the second level, you start looking at more infrastructure and performance and things like that. On the third level, instrumentation and experimentation is done to validate a majority of things. And on the fourth level, it just kind of becomes the norm. People accept you have to do this because so much work is waste, and you have to kind of know what it is. And there's depending on what level people are, you might just work with logs, or you might have something that kind of systematically looks at every single thing you do. And there's a really good way of considering these things to see if you want to take the next step, what would be the next logical step based on all these things.
Yeah, I think that a bit of organization in the chaotic world could be useful. Like even in the best musical improvisation, there is a repeatable pattern as a leitmotif as a starting point for this,
Mm,
let's say, chaotic stuff.
mm.
Um, yeah. So as majority of the Architecture Weekly subscribers are either tech leaders, senior developers, architects, then what would you recommend to them? Because the book, I super enjoy the book. It's really useful, and however, it focuses on the product stuff, which is great because that's what this book is about. But some people in our tech industry are like, no, I just like to do my stuff. What would you recommend to them? Why
So I think kind of
would they need?
the
Mhm.
question is if you're like I used to be a contract developer and I worked for other people as well before I started building my own products. And for me, rework and doing stuff that has no impact or has negative impact is really soul defeating. So I think if your listeners and your newsletter subscribers are like me, then the chance of actually preventing rework and the chance of doing the right thing is amazing. And they don't need to be the ones making product decisions. But tech
Mhm.
people probably are not. But I think there's a massive opportunity for tech people to use the lessons and tooling and mental models from DevOps and from observability, from crash monitoring, from exception monitoring, and things like that, and provide signals to the product people.
Mhm.
So, I'm lucky in a sense where I'm everything from the pre-sales to product to development to testing in my company. But um, say I was working with at a larger company, like most of your viewers will be doing. It probably would not be my job to tell the product managers you need to do subtitle support, but it would be my job to tell the product manager like 1% of our users are trying to upload subtitle files.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's kind of maybe consider that trying to figure out what's going on. Maybe we missed something in research, or some percentage of our users are clicking on the stuff we didn't expect them to click on. And as like we have the tooling for that. The product tooling is mostly around tracking expected things. Product analytics are mostly about looking at, as you said, the funnel and the clicks and things like
Mhm.
that. They're not looking at unexpected stuff because if the product people could expect it, they would be tracking it. By
Mhm.
definition, unexpected stuff is not there. But we have technical tools to look at unexpected stuff, and we have lessons and knowledge from observability and DevOps how to look at unexpected stuff. And I think these can be very powerful signals for product management, so we can kind of start providing that information to product people so they can benefit from that. And then we can benefit as technical people in a sense of kind of, first of all, building more successful products and then avoiding rework and avoiding kind of wasting our time.
Yeah, I also think that for many people in like the developers, using the techniques from lizard optimization can be useful for talking to business people because I'm quite often being asked how to talk with the business people, and to me that sounds like how to talk to fellow humans. But for those that are asking, is more like how to talk with lizards, because as tech people, quite often we always know better, and the all the mm, business features and product suggestions are quite often like why they are coming up with these weird cases. So do you
Yeah,
think that
maybe
it
understanding the logic behind the weird cases is really important.
mm, do you think that it's also like because that sounds, the lizard optimization also sounds to me like more like nurturing curiosity and empathy to other
Absolutely, and I think there's a lot of it there, and I think again there are other tools for nurturing empathy and things like that. This is just one potential tool to look at, but I think figuring out what people really want is important to build good products.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think that really many people could benefit from learning that stuff on how to build products. N- Like you already mentioned, to even give a proper feedback to product people, which can like selfishly, it can boost your career because then those people that can talk and have a good conversation with the product people are those that are usually moving forward, not always, not in each organization, but
Yeah,
in many
but
cases.
then again, if you're good with tech and you learn how to build good products, that's a wonderful position to be in. You can start building your own stuff and then being your own boss. That's
Yeah.
a potential benefit.
One more thing, because I'm doing a lot of open source, and like open source is not a business model, or some may say good business model. I think not a business model at all. And after reading your book, I think that I realized that one of the issues with the like building your libraries and hoping that you will earn some money is that if you're building like a library, let's say for Node.js, C# or whatever, then actually you can't gather the proper data, because if you, of course, you could try to send some telemetry to your own server, but then no one would be probably using that. So do you think that there are some types of product that are better for you know getting information and feedback loops, or
Yeah, I mean, if you ship something and you have no contact with people anymore like that, then you can't do metrics, but you can still engage people on a forum or
Mhm,
a discussion list or some kind of support. The GitHub issue tracker and things like that. Occasionally, you might figure out that people are doing weird things. It's slower than doing online monitoring, but you can absolutely engage with people after they use your product. And I think, again, when you do a library and people keep kind of sending you bug reports or they're doing weird things, it's an interesting question to figure out what are they trying to do with your library, and are they
mhm,
trying to do some stuff that's maybe wasn't the original intention of the library or something like that.
mhm. Do you have some recommendations how to talk to lizards? Because my guess is quite often you are meeting them not precisely in the best time of their life. Quite often they might be frustrated, etc.
I think, yeah, that's now a slightly different thing. Whether you are monitoring or whether you're talking to people, I think that's a skill on its own. I kind of try to disarm conversations by kind of offering a solution first and then explaining what happened. Um, but yeah, I guess trying to get people to explain what they were trying to do and why that's important is interesting.
Mm. Um, Okay, so yeah, I think that we covered a lot. So my question, the other question, because you already mentioned that you don't want lizard optimization to replace the other practices, more to be complementary. You already mentioned also some links, and on your website, lizardoptimization.com, there are also other resources. I will
Mhm.
also add some under the recording. But if you had to select like one or two or three tools that you see that they are matching best the lizard optimization, then what would be your option?
If you're asking about technical tools, I think any kind of crash logging or exception logging or something like
Mm-hmm,
that is good. I personally use CloudWatch because my stuff
mm-hmm,
is deployed on Amazon, but people can use other things as well.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
Uh,
I also meant not only technical, but also like the product or
so I think,
other
yeah, I
things.
think kind of like this fits in very interestingly with product experimentation and with kind of figuring out value and things like that. So the two books I mentioned, Evidence Guided by Itamar Gilad and Trustworthy Online Controlled Experiments by Ron Kohavi, they are excellent. I will send you the links to that to include with the newsletter. I think I've kind of mentioned the Alexander Fabian's work on the experimentation growth model. So I think that's quite an interesting thing to consider when you look at like how do we move the monitoring and metrics to the next level? Even if you're not doing product stuff, even if you're doing just technical monitoring, how do we move that to the next level? That's an interesting thing to look at. I'll send you the link for that. And yeah, maybe those would be the kind of the initial recommendations.
Yeah. And do you, if someone would like to start doing that, do you think that they also have to start learning statistics and other math?
Well, I mean, no. I think there are already kind of very useful tools out there like calculators and things like that that give you relevance. I think it's important to understand these things and what's behind it. I don't think you have to learn I mean, learning statistics is a useful life skill, like learning anything else. But do you have to do it? No, you don't. There are websites there where you can type in, this is how many people try to click on a link. This is how many people did this. This is kind of the other variant, and then it will tell you whether it's useful or not, or whether you need to run the experiment for 3 more days or a week or whatever. So I think again, Rocco Javi's book is relatively light touch on that. It explains the key concepts really well, and then if you want to learn statistics after that, you can, but you don't have to.
Okay, Gojko, thank you a lot for all of those insights from myself and also from the readers and watchers and listeners. I really enjoyed the book, so if you're listening or watching that, go buy the book. It's really fun reading, not too long, and yeah.
So you're sending this thing in a newsletter, I guess, so I can give your readers a 50% discount on the book. I'll give you the discount code to include in.
Oh, that would be great. That would be great. Thank you a lot. That would be much appreciated. Okay. So any final message? Should we start to believe in conspiracy theory or at least start to dig into them?
So dig into the conspiracy theory of your company always delivering more value. So that's the kind of biggest conspiracy theory. Try to get them to measure whether they're actually delivering value or not.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
a
you.
lot.